Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Michele Benyo. She's a certified grief recovery specialist, early childhood educator, and parent coach, and the founder of Good Grief Parenting. After her 6-year-old son died of cancer, her 3-year-old daughter said, "Mommy, half of me is gone." This heartbreaking statement defined Michele's life purpose. Her mission is twofold: to help parents through the unimaginable challenges of parenting while grieving the death of a child, and to equip parents to meet the unique needs of a child who has lost a sibling in the early childhood years. The desire of Michele's heart is to see families leap forward after loss toward a future bright with possibilities and even joy. Welcome, Michele. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Irina. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So please share with us. You also mentioned that you are a single parent. Please share with us how you became a single parent and what challenges you faced on that journey.
Yes. Well, I became a single parent actually very soon after my son died, and a lot of people kind of jumped to the conclusion there's a belief out there, and I don't necessarily think it's true. I've never researched the statistics myself, but there's a belief out there that often marriages do fail after the death of a child. And I would say that's not necessarily true. Usually what happens, which was also the case in my divorce, was that there were cracks there before. And so we did get divorced soon after my son died. But it really wasn't because of our journey. We went through our journey of his 2.5-year battle with cancer and his death. We went through it very tightly knit as a family of 4. And as a couple, we were very supportive of each other. And in fact, even after our divorce, we were. But we had some cracks in our marriage beforehand, and there were some choices made. My husband made some bad choices, I will just say, and we ended up getting divorced. And so as I was raising my 3.5-year-old daughter after her brother died, it was her and me in our home, and her dad was still in her life, but I was her primary caregiver and raised her as co-parenting, but also sort of essentially as a single parent.
Yeah. And what were some of the challenges that you faced, or was everything a smooth ride?
Oh, yes. Well, everything was a smooth ride. No, not really. I think one of the main decisions we made, and I will just say, I was an early childhood parent educator. When I became a parent in my my late 30s, and I was just so excited by that role. I went back to school and got my master's in family education and became an early childhood parent educator. So from the beginning, even before my son was ill, I had this focus on what was best for my children. So we were really attuned when we got divorced that I particularly was, that I had this little girl who had lost her brother, and now her dad was gone. So we went from a family of 4 to, in her household, a family of 2. And the most important thing was for her to have both of her parents supporting her. For me as her mom, the most important thing was to help her have a good relationship with her dad, even though, this is a public forum. So I'll just say his mistake was the reason we got divorced, but we parented her together, and I didn't want her to I wanted her to focus on what a good man he was and what a good dad he was. And I just think that's so important for parents, no matter what the situation of the divorce is. It can be really tempting, especially if we harbor our own bitterness, to allow that to become part of what the child receives from us. And the child, I just think, really needs to have as good as possible a relationship with both parents. So that was a challenge, more later in years than in the beginning. But I think that is so important. My feeling, really, to be honest, was when we got divorced, was that finally I could be I didn't have to be control. He was a bit, I don't want to paint it darker than it was, but a lot of my feeling, frankly, when we got divorced was that I was sort of liberated from, having to do things his way. And the challenges, I think the biggest challenges were making sure that my daughter wasn't affected adversely about that separation and about any feelings that I might have.
Mm-hmm. And how old was your daughter when this happened?
She was 3.5, or, about 4. Her brother died when she was about 3.5, and her dad was out of our home, before the end of the year. Her brother died in May. And so it was a lot of change for her all at once. But my feeling was, I will just help her deal with all of this loss at once. We're just going to deal with all of this at once. I didn't want to have a bad relationship going on in the home where I was trying to help her heal. And so I just took that challenge on all at once.
And what were some of the tools you introduced to help your daughter deal with this?
I think the biggest thing, and when I talk, I work with families who have experienced child loss and are going through family grief, families with young children. This is my focus, is this early childhood age. And I think the biggest mistake that parents often make is to try to protect the child from the thing that happened that upset their world. And we can't keep them from it. She very well knew, that her brother had died. She very well knew that her dad was gone. I think the main thing that I did to try to help her was to just allow that to be a reality in our world, and to say, we don't like this, but this is what we have. And, I helped her find ways to hold on to the good parts of both of those relationships. Of course, she still saw her dad regularly, and with her brother as well. It was important for her to remember him and to have good memories of him. So two things were to just talk with her when I was sad or when I was missing those people who were gone. I was open about that with her, but I also taught her that we are capable. We're going to get through this. We're going to heal from this. One of the things that I share with families is kind of this idea of lemonade. And I'll just share this here because it was a big part of what we did through the years with her as a little one that had this family reality that I just didn't want her to have. I didn't want her to be missing her brother. I didn't want her to not have her dad. Before all of this happened, we had this wonderful family of 4. So I have this lemonade theory, if you want to call it a theory, this lemonade approach, which is we have this big, fat lemon. We do not want this big, fat lemon, but we have it. And so what are we going to do with it? We can either put it on the counter and say, I'm not going to deal with this lemon, and it'll sit there and it'll start to rot and it'll start to stink. Or we can take this lemon and bite into it and it's bitter and it's sour, and we can throw it against the wall and say, I don't want to deal with this lemon. Or we can say, okay, I've got this big fat lemon. What am I going to do with it? And you can slice it up, and you can add some sugar and some water, and you can taste it and say, is this good lemonade? And you can add some more sugar, and you can just try to make something good out of it. And I've always told this story as making lemonade, but you could make a lemon pie, you could make lemon bars, whatever you want to do, but you have this lemon and you can do something with it. And so I approached it that way a lot, especially with the absence of her brother, because, the work I do is with bereaved siblings who have lost a sibling and the impact that has on them. And it was so huge on her. As you shared, she said, Mommy, half of me is gone when her brother died. And so that's a big fat lemon, and there's nothing I can do about that lemon. So a lot of what we did was, as she was still young, was just, I would just say to myself, and sometimes even to her, we don't want this way, but it's the way it is. So, we're going to do this with it, and just really tried to have that lemonade attitude about the lemon that we had. And then just, as I say, with young children, we often don't talk to them about the hard things. But they know the hard things are there. They're going through them too. And it's much more comforting for them to know that you're going to help them through it, and we're going to get through it. So this idea of, we're on an adventure, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we're going to make the best of it. And then just being open about when it hurts, are two things that I think are just really important for parents to do, that I think were really helpful with my daughter. Just, we're going to take this challenge on, and we're going to just do this, and we can do this.
Yes, I love your analogy with the lemonade, and I think it's so easy for the child to understand.
Yes.
You don't have to take things in our life will happen, but it's all a matter how we react to those things. And I think by showing the lemonade example,
yes,
any situation, there is a silver lining about it. And it's not about saying, oh, we dismiss, we push the situation away. It's not be there. But what if we can pick the good parts, remember the good parts, the relationships that we had, because those are still there. They're not gone. They're still in our heart. And I love that idea, lemonade. And the fact that, you don't shield. I know they're little kids, but we're raising future adults. If we think exactly that way, then
and that's yes, and that's how children build resilience. They build resilience from hardship, and we can't protect them from hardship. They're going to have it. And so what we need to show them is this is what we do with it. This is how we, rise above it. I mean, the other thing, it's an interesting, I also mentioned the being on an adventure thing. And that was something I did a lot with my daughter when things would go wrong, like something wasn't the way we expected it to be. And this wasn't just, grief and loss related. This was just in life. And I'd say, well, we're on an adventure. And she got so used to that. I remember once when she was older and something happened, and I got discouraged by it. And she said, Mom, I mean, it was like, Mom, that's not like you. We're not supposed to get discouraged. We're on an adventure. And she kind of reminded me. And so those are just ways to just really build that attitude of I'm capable, I can handle this. I don't have to like everything, but I can take everything on. And that just really helps children at a young age build such resilience skills that will take them into adulthood in a much healthier and happier way.
Yeah. And I guess the personal experience led you to do the work that you do now by working with families where there was a sibling that passed away. And please elaborate, how do you help people in that regard?
Well, as I told you, I went back and got my master's in family education when I became a parent. And then I had this wonderful job. I got to take my 2 kids to school to work with me every day at this, early childhood program. And I thought my world was perfect. And I was able to raise my 2 kids and spend every day with other parents like me with young children. And I was the one that brought the information and the knowledge and the resources. Of course, I wasn't the only one with wisdom. They all had that. But then my son got cancer, and we were faced with this loss of dreams, of expectations. And no matter how well prepared I was for that, or for early childhood, I wasn't really prepared. I hadn't gained from getting my master's what I needed to get through that with her. And or with both of them, but then especially when her brother died and she said, "Mommy, half of me is gone." And knowing what I knew about early childhood development and all of the, identity development that goes on when we're that age, I knew that that was a true statement. And I didn't know what to do about it. And so my approach from the very beginning was, okay, I have to help her. She can't grow up with half of her gone. How do I do this? And I wasn't really able to find a lot of resources for kids. I need to say, this was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. My daughter is now 26. Her brother died in 2000. So what I am doing now with Good Grief Parenting it's a decision I made in the beginning, but it's a product of more than 20 years of learning about children's grief and loss, and particularly sibling loss, because and older siblings who lose their siblings will tell you this: part of me is gone. As a 3.5-year-old, it was her developing identity that was suddenly ripped away before she even had a chance to really form it. And I knew that that was critical for her. That would impact her for the rest of her life. And indeed it has. And so that was really my heart for my little girl, who now had to grow up without her brother, and as it happened, without her dad in the home. And what was I going to do with this? As a professional in early childhood, it just really focused me on the lack of resources. Even now, 20 years later, there are more resources for children going through grief and loss. And there are more resources for siblings, although that is still a very overlooked group of grievers. I think anyone out there who's a bereaved sibling would tell you that. There is so little for this early childhood age. And so that's why I'm just really committed to this, because now I've seen her grow up from 3.5 to 26, and I've seen all the points in her life where the loss of her brother at the age of 3.5 had really impacted how she developed, who she is, how she navigated socially, what her self-concept is. So many things about her life were impacted by losing her brother at the age of 3.5. And so, I became committed to this in the beginning when I couldn't find the resources. And now I've had the chance to see, all the touch points. So the thing that I do that's different than a lot of other people who work with families after child loss is that I really help parents parent and prepare the child and themselves for the lifetime of the impact of that grief. It isn't just about coping with the loss at the time that it happens, which is what, grief support groups are really good with, helping you with the loss. But it's that long-term trajectory of what grief is going to be in your life as a parent, but more importantly, in the sibling's life, because she goes through so many developmental phases and changes where that grief changes and evolves with her. And that's what I help parents help their children with.
I think you're doing such an important work and so very needed.
Yeah, thank you.
If you had an opportunity, what kind of advice would you give to single parents?
I think the biggest thing really is for single parents to have hope and optimism, to foster that with our children. We don't always know where what we need is going to come from, but have that optimistic view that, we can do this. As a single parent, you can do this. You need to find the resources that you need and just be sure that you look for those, that you find those. I just love, Irina, that you are doing this podcast, because that's exactly what you are for single parents. So, listen to this podcast, find the places where other people who are walking your journey have walked and are sharing what they've learned, and just this, camaraderie of knowing that a lot of us who are single parents find resources that we can share, have stories that can encourage. And as a single parent, for you to know that you have your own wisdom and your own resources, and wherever you feel you need support, go find it. Listen to this podcast, tell Irina, can you find someone who can talk about this topic, because I need help with that, and then see who she discovers. But yeah, just really make sure you have the support you need, and trust your own wisdom as well.
I like that. Thank you. Because oftentimes we trust other people's opinions, dismiss our own, especially when we are brand new single parents and we are looking for our way into this new way of life. We find ourselves lost sometimes. And this is how this podcast started, because there was no resources like that. At least in my immediate area. Now it's more common and there are so many support groups available, but
you really pulled out such an important piece, though, Irina, and that is because the same thing happens when people are grieving. When I lost my son, I had never experienced that before, and I somehow thought there was a correct way for me to do this grief, especially as a parent with a young child. I was afraid of doing the wrong thing for her sake as well as my own, and I learned that there is not a right way, that however I was grieving was the way I was supposed to grieve. The main thing when we're doing these journeys, whether it's, death, or whether it's loss of a loved one through death, or whether it's loss of a relationship through divorce, is to know that what you need to do and what you're doing is okay. You don't need to do it. People who try to tell you there's a certain way to be a single parent, you can it can be crazy making to have this feeling that you want to do something a particular way and someone else tells you should be doing something different. So it really, I love that you reiterated that message of trusting yourself, because that's how you're going to have the confidence to make the best of your situation as a single parent, is by not second guessing yourself every time someone gives you advice. Some of that advice might be wise, but your own gut feeling is very wise as well.
Yes. What would you say is the most important trait to instill in a child?
Two things. One really is optimism, and the other is just capability. This idea that they are capable. All of the ways that you can give them an opportunity to solve a problem, or that you can give them an opportunity to face something. You are the support for them, but they are capable, and I think that that's just huge. And if they feel capable, they're also going to feel optimistic about their future, because they're going to know they can take it on. So I think that's the biggest thing, not always doing for them, not always giving them answers, but helping them discover, what do you think would be the thing to do now? What can you do about this situation, and helping them feel capable.
No, I like that. I haven't heard that one before.
Mhm.
Capability and optimism. Yes,
Yeah.
optimism. Have the ability to see the silver lining or something positive. Sometimes, where did I hear this? Michael Beckwith says, "What is presently good here that I cannot see?"
Yes, yes.
Something negative happens
Mhm.
immediately. We feel upset. We feel triggered. But if we take a moment, the pause to think about.
Yes, yes. And I have the power, I have the power to find the good thing, and then I have the power to follow through and make it a better thing. That is, that's empowering for us and for our children.
Yeah. What would you say is your personal superpower?
I think that it is finding the encouragement in a situation. And there a lot of people can find information. I think what I do is pull out the positive spin on that information and the encouragement. And when I work with families, the encouragement that they can do it differently. They can do it their own way. They can do it. I think that's my superpower.
I love that. That's incredible.
Mm.
Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
I don't think so. I think the message of our conversation today is really is really that message of finding the support that you need. I hope that your listeners, many of them have not lost a child. I hope not many of them have, but certainly anyone in that situation, I am a support for you to get through that really difficult loss situation. And you and I both are just really bringing the idea of encouragement and finding the support you need. And I think that is the main message that your audience, that I would like for them to hear, and for them to be hopeful and encouraged by the situation they find themselves in. And if it's loss of a child, that carries so many pains and dark places, but that's not the end of the story. And so I just really would love for you to reach out to me, or if you know anyone who has lost a child and is raising young children now with that just tremendous, unthinkable heartache, please reach out to me. I am just here to talk with anybody that needs that conversation. And I'm available for that through my Linktree link, which is just Linktree /Good Grief Parenting. So yeah, just get the support you need.
Thank you. And other than the Linktree, is there any other places that people can find you?
Yes, my website is goodgriefparenting.com. I also have a good grief guide there that's just very good for any adults who want to help young children through grief of any kind. And so pick that up from my website. And I'm on Instagram at Good Grief Parenting. So really, Good Grief Parenting is where you're going to find me in social media. And please do that. My Linktree link is in Instagram. But yeah, and I encourage you to reach out. I would just love to connect with anyone who feels that I could be helpful in conversation with them.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. We will include all of the episode links in episode notes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Irina. Very nice to meet you and talk with you today.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.